Carroll City Council meeting will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the roll call show all members are present. And first up this evening, we have Chief Burke and Park and Rec Director Jack Wardell with introductions of new staff.
This is Tony Amdor. He's our new officer in the department. He just started last week. He is going to be completing some field training, and then he's going to head off to the academy January 4th for 14 weeks down there. Come back and some more field training, and we'll get him on his own probably about June of next year. So we've got a long time of training ahead of him, and we look forward to working with him. He's going to be a good officer for us.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Tony. Jack?
All right. And also we have new hire, Mackenzie Kiger, started last Monday. She was one of 47 applicants, and we went through a long interview process, and she obviously rose to the top, and we're excited to have her. A lot of aquatic experience, a lot of special programs, different things, so we're very excited to have her. And it's Mackenzie.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, both of you. We're looking forward to seeing you guys out in the community and working with you in the future.
Thanks.
So, very good. All right, then we will move into the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the September 28th meeting and approval of bills and claims.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Haley?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Tate?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right, thank you. Do we have any oral requests or communications from the audience tonight on matters that are all not already on the agenda? Go ahead and come forward, sir.
My name is Ray Apple. I'm the former mayor of the city of Templeton, so I offer you guys my condolences. It's a tough spot to fill. I'm glad that we got people that are board that are willing to do it. Marlene and I moved to the city of Carroll in 1996 and bought the first home built on Amy Circle. I'm here in regard to the wild weed infestation problem that has been allowed to escalate the last 4 years. I want to thank Brad for sending pictures out of the problem areas to the other elected officials. This problem has grown from the commercial area to the residential. It's also up all the way down to Highway 30. It's impossible for the homeowners to take care of the problem if we don't get to the root of the issue, and it starts on Highway 30. 4 years ago, we had a little hunk here, a little hunk there. Today, I have to reseed my yard every 3 or 4 years due to the infestation of the grass vescus. It's not in the weed family, so it takes Roundup to kill it. That's the only way you'll kill it. I've called Mr. Weed Commissioner several different times in the last 4 years. Mr. Kyler has been to our house 2 or 3 different times. Brad was there again yesterday. And you look at the adjoining properties on Grant Road, first 2 houses are full of it. We have 2 vacant lots directly across the street on Amy Circle where I live. You get out onto that side hill and you look at the beautiful church tower and you scan a little further and there sits a commercial storage building with a tin roof. So nobody's going to build on those 2 lots. They're not going to look out the back window and want to see a storage building. It's a waste. It's unfortunate that the city has let that go. It isn't the first time I've complained. I've been up here many times before with Brad and so forth and Kyler, and nobody does it any avail. It's like, well, I can't solve your problem. Do we have to let the weed problem go all the way to 18th Street before we're going to take steps to eliminate it? If we can't solve the problem today, maybe it's because the ordinances we have in effect today was done 15 years ago when Hip Keenapple was your man and I was the mayor of the city of Templeton. Changes are ongoing. We have different people coming into our homes, building and living there that don't have the same desire as the older people to keep the lots clean, to keep the grass clean. And I think we as elected officials need to get out and start walking those areas. That 8th Street from the High Ridge to the rec center was an embarrassment. Streets with the big gates full of rust, it took a whole year to get them painted. And we probably had 5,000 people come through there, guys, that's seen that. We have weeds growing in the curb. There's no reason for that. All it takes is somebody to supervise. I mentioned to Brad, all you need to do is take an edger, run it down both sides of the sidewalk, run it to the curb, and you probably won't have to address it again for 3 years. What we did, we took a line trimmer, gouged the sides, did the curb, and left the junk lay in the curb. I think we're better than that. And I think somebody needs to get out and do a better job. We brag how we're #1, and yet we don't work up to it. If you're going to walk it, you got to be able to talk it, guys. And that's what it's all about. I've walked it, I've talked it before, so I'm not agreeing to what you guys can do and what you want to do and what's your responsibility. You owe it to the city of Carroll and the citizens to take some action. The other area I think we're really lax on, unfortunately, is that radon gases in the city of Carroll still today remain the best secret we have. We discovered radon in our home 5 years ago. Research hospitals today definitely feel there's a link to some of the radon gases and cancers. We have a lot of people moving in and out of the city of Carroll. We have kids sleeping in our basements where the radon is the most acceptable. We have cancer in the Midwest, it's full. 1 person a week is diagnosed with cancer today in our health facilities. It's long overdue for the city of Carroll to mandate a radon test before any home be sold or occupied when it's a new home. It's simple. It can be done. We owe it to the people that moved to Carroll that don't let their kids sleep in the basement and let them sleep in cancerous conditions. I have 2 sons that are doctors. My oldest son is in Iowa City. 15 years ago, his boss was going to turn 62, 6 months before he turned 62. He was diagnosed with lung cancer. They buried him, and 30 days later, they went out and did a radon test of that home. The man never smoked. His wife never smoked. And that home had radon gases 3 times that they are acceptable limits today. Our people in Des Moines and Washington refuse to take any action because they don't want to spend the dollars to clean it up. The radon gas is a simple little test. You hang it from the ceiling. You can pick it up at Ace Hardware or any of the furniture stores, and we do nothing to make sure that's done. In Iowa City today, you would not think of selling a home without a radon test. I know that because my son sold his home and mandated a radon test. And they took mitigation action before that home ever got sold. And I think we owe that to the people today that are coming to Carroll to take that action. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Any questions?
Questions from council at all?
I would like, you're saying it's mandatory in Iowa City?
My son sold his home in Iowa City.
Okay, and as
said,
they sell it, it's a mandatory.
he said, you wouldn't think of buying a home in Iowa City because the public today is so versed on the dangers of radon that nobody will buy it.
Okay, but is it required by a city ordinance?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know. But why would we want to let people move into the city of Carroll and have the possibility of their kids getting cancer? No reason. You pass the $1,000 or $2,000 that it takes to make that home mitigation free onto the buyer or on the seller. We have a lot of kids living in the basements of these homes today, and that's where the exposure is the highest. Our home was twice as high as the acceptable limits of Carroll, and that home was built in 1996. So how many of the homes today in Carroll actually have radon that have never been tested?
Ray, do you know of any cities or communities that have that integrated into their ordinances?
No, I didn't go that far.
Okay.
I didn't go that far.
The
only reason we did our home is the fact that 15 years ago when my son said his boss died, he said, "Dad, you better get yours tested." So we went ahead and did that on our own.
I guess you mentioned that it's one of the great secrets of Carroll. I don't know this. I didn't realize it was a secret, to be honest with you, Ray. I thought we kind of knew it because I moved in 2008, and that was one of the things that I did do when I bought was to test the house. But certainly there needs to be a level of awareness, and and I appreciate you bringing this to us today.
I think we as an elected body need to make sure that it gets done. And all you gotta do is attach it to the sale of the house. So no home gets sold in the city of Carroll without a radon test. It's that simple. That's not asking too much to make sure that kids that are gonna live in the basement don't get cancer.
So perhaps a discussion with the Realtors Association
Sure.
here within town. And,
Okay.
and I know that there's also a private entity that does radon mitigation as well. Based here in-
It's as
based
close
here
as
in
good as
Carroll
Carroll.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Okay, well, thank you. And moving on, we will move, having no ordinances, we'll move into resolutions. And first up is the abandonment, release of easement, Nichols First Edition. And for this, I will open a public hearing at 5:26. And David.
Thank you, Mayor. If you recall at the last meeting, you established this as the hearing date, the public hearing date for the abandonment of an easement. Give you a little background again, the easement was established or was granted to the city back in 1968, and the easement was simply granted over an 80-acre parcel of land. Randy did confirm there is a sewer main on a portion of this 80 acres, but it's way on the southwest portion of this big parcel. The reason this came to the forefront was there's a property owner who happens to be selling property on Highway 30, East Highway 30. This easement pops up in the abstract showing, potentially an easement over this large piece of land, of which his parcel is part of that 80 acres. So, examining attorney for the owner requested that we kind of clean up this matter. That's why council is being asked to abandon this easement only over this particular property that's being sold right now. There is no sewer line easement over this property, will not be, and that's why we're bringing this to the council's attention for abandonment. So again, this is the time and place of the public hearing. After public hearing, I would recommend that council approve the abandonment and release of the right-of-way easement for this particular property.
Okay.
If the homeowner wants sanitation easement put back in, they can do that in the future.
Well, there's already sanitation, there's a sewer line already to this property, and it's being brought in by the street right-of-way.
Okay.
The property faces the highway, actually.
Okay.
And the sewer line is in the right-of-way
It's in the
at this
right-of-way,
point.
okay.
Yeah, so there's no chance that the property owner will be restricted from any future sewer line.
So there's a sewer line there, if they want to pull sewer into their property, they can do it. Okay.
Yep.
Any further questions of David from council? Do I have any members of the public here to speak in favor or against? Then if there's nothing else on this matter, I will close the public hearing at 5:28. And I need a motion to approve the abandonment and release of sanitary sewer line easement over the property described as Lot 2 of re-subdivision of Outlot A, Nichols First Edition to Carroll, Carroll County, Iowa.
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Jensen?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Tate? Motion approved.
Thank you. Our second resolution is the abandonment, release of easement Lot 5, East Business Park subdivision. And David.
Thank you again, Mayor. Yeah, we're apparently on an abandonment of easement kick here, but Randy brought this to your attention last council meeting. Property owner on the east part of town, just north of the service station there at Arby's, would like to expand their parking lot to the north of their property. If they do expand the lot, it would extend over our 20-foot recreational easement that we have out there. So what they had proposed to Randy, and again, Randy brought this to your attention at the last council meeting, they would like us to abandon the present recreational easement on that property, Lot 5. Then in turn, they would give us essentially a new easement, which would be actually wider on the north end of the easement and then narrower on the south end, which then would allow them to not infringe on our recreational easement as they build their parking lot. So, but anyway, what we're doing tonight is council is just being requested to set up a public hearing, again, just like we did with the present or the last abandonment that you just took action on. So I would recommend council, at the very least, set up the public hearing for 2 weeks, which would be the 26th. And then again, at that point, council would have the option of abandoning the easement and then at the same time accepting the new easement from the property owners.
Okay. Any further questions for David on this? Then I would look for a motion to set a public hearing for October 26th at 5:15 on the abandonment and release of the recreation trail easement over property described as east 20 feet of Lot 5, East Business Park Subdivision, official plat, City of Carroll, Carroll County, Iowa.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Seaman?
Yes.
Pats?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Tate?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right, our third resolution is to set dates of a consultation and public hearing on proposed fourth amended and restated urban renewal plan for the amended and restated Central Business District urban renewal area in the City of Carroll. And Laura.
As a continued effort of council through their planning session and the CIP, you have stated that you want to continue doing the streetscape phases as well as some other street resurfacing improvements. At the last council meeting, you affirmed that through a work session that you wanted to continue to do on those projects. In addition to that work session, staff had brought forth to expand next year's Phase 8 project to include a new area that is currently not listed as a project in our urban renewal area, or in our urban renewal plan, excuse me, which we're calling the Northeast Access Road from 10th Street to 15th Street. In order for us to be eligible to collect TIF dollars to fund this project, if that's the way we want to fund the project for this part of Phase 8, we need to amend our current urban renewal plan and specifically list that project. As you'll recall, a couple of years ago, it's been maybe at least 2-3 years now, the state legislature had changed and made some upgrades, I'll call it, to the urban renewal laws that are on the book, stating that we need to be quite a bit more specific on our projects that we want to do within an urban renewal area and collect TIF dollars to fund them. So tonight is the first step in that process. In your packet, memo information was the resolution that'll set out a number of things, which we'll talk about in just a moment, as well as a draft of the plan. And with that, some information came available to us today that staff would like to amend the plan that was originally sent out in the agenda packet. Piece of paper should have been laid at your desk tonight, as well as an email was sent if you got that as well. And it looks like this. Specifically, what we're looking at is this is section number 4 in your plan, where it talks about specifically the projects or anticipated projects that we would like to do within the urban renewal area and potentially use TIF dollars. Where the difference lies in what you originally had sent out in the agenda packet and what is we would like to change is the street resurfacing projects. After close review of looking at our current 5-year CIP, there are some street resurfacing projects where a portion of those projects are within the urban renewal area. As allowing or having the opportunity to use TIF, not saying we would have to, but if we wanted to use TIF when we came to doing those projects, we need to list those sections of the street resurfacing, those sections of the streets, if we wanted to do that. And so that would expand what we originally had in there. Originally, we just had Court Street, 4th Street to 7th Street, After review of the CIP, it looks like there's other streets that that are within our urban renewal area, which include East Street, US Highway 30 to 7th Street, Quint Avenue, US 30 to 7th Street, and then 6th Street from Quint Avenue extension to Highway 30. So tonight, if council agrees, we'd like to get that amended into the plan. And what you approve tonight will set this as the plan that we're putting forward. Because the other steps that are involved include, this resolution tonight sets a consultation date, which we would recommend doing the consultation October 23rd, designating the city manager as a representative for the city, directing that the notice be mailed to the affected taxing entities for the consultation, which includes Carroll County and the community school district. And actually, I plan to, if council approves, I plan to hand deliver those tomorrow. Set a public hearing then for November 9th, and direct that the public hearing be published, and direct that a copy of the proposed plan be on file at the city clerk's office or here at City Hall. Does anybody have any questions about what the resolution is putting forth or anything that we have in the plan? We're not changing the area. We are just more specifically defining the projects that we know that could be projects within the area that we know of as of today. If other projects come up in the future, we would have to come back and amend it as well, if we want to use TIF.
If financing's not there, we can incrementally take parts of this out. Correct.
By listing these projects in here does not mean that we are going to do them. But there's a possibility that we could do them. And if we do them, doesn't necessarily mean we would use TIF, but we could.
Correct. Okay.
So we do this simply to allow ourselves to use TIF for these specific areas.
Correct.
And you're just defining it more sharply so that
everybody
Correct.
knows, yes.
Yep.
Yes. Are there any other questions?
Any other questions for council? All right. Then I would be looking for a motion to approve the resolution, setting the dates of the consultation and public hearing on a proposed fourth amended and reinstated urban renewal plan for the amended and restated Central Business District urban renewal area.
so moved.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Haley?
Yes.
Kate? Seaman?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Our final resolution is the income offset program. And Laura.
A couple weeks ago, I had received information from the Iowa Department of Administrative Services, which directly affects the income offset agreement or MOU, memorandum of understanding, that we have in place with them. Currently, we work with DAS, or Department of Administrative Services, where we will notify them if somebody is a debtor to the city of Carroll, and they will hold that information on file until at a point, if they are ever owed money from the state, meaning the most common one is a tax return. If they were owed money from the state, the DAS will notify the city and say, hey, somebody is going to be getting money from the state, but you've already told us that they owe money to you. So we will contact that person and say, in order for you to get your tax return, you need to take care of the debt you have with the city, or we can take the tax return money to take care of that debt. Well, this new MOU that they're requesting we enter into says that we need to have an appeal process in place for the debtor to have a chance to dispute or to say, no, that surely is not my debt. So working with Dave, city attorney, we have before you a new policy, an Iowa income offset appeal process policy that would go into our policies and procedures manual. Is the first item, and then a resolution to approve that. It lists out basically that they have a chance to come before the city manager, the city clerk, and another city representative as designated by the city manager. And then that process to go through to present their case, and then the city would have to respond. And then ultimately they would also have an option to have a hearing before council if they did not like the first results of that appeal. And then the other thing in your packet tonight is a resolution to approve the new MOU to continue to be a part of this program, that to collect debts that are outstanding to the city of Carroll.
Laura, is this something that the city has used in the past and has been effective?
The appeal process?
No, not the appeal process, the actual,
Yes.
yes, the collection
Yes.
process.
I don't have numbers or statistics on how much we bring in, but it's at least a few $100s every year, maybe close to 1,000.
Okay.
Just that now they can appeal it. right?
Now, there's going to be, yes, an actual appeal process in place.
Did anyone ever object before that you know of, and how did they go about doing that since there was no process?
We did have one, I know one for sure, I'm thinking maybe two, that it was very informal. We asked them questions over the phone, they supplied answers, and we made a decision in the office on which way we thought was best in the situation. So it was informal. Now we just have a more formal written process.
Okay. This formal process is always better for employees now and future employees too.
Mhm.
Just kind of protects us as we have those discussions, because sometimes they can be pretty hard ones.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Laura on this matter? Then I need a motion to approve the income offset appeal process policy.
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Fleshner?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Tate?
Yeah.
Haley?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
And do you also want a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Iowa Department of Administrative Services, State Accounting Enterprises, and the City of Carroll for participation in the income offset program?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Seaman?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Tate? Motion is approved.
All right, now we are on to reports, and first up is the water supply well and transmission main improvements, and Randy.
Thank you. During the construction of the transmission main improvements, several issues were encountered that were not included in the plans or the contract. We've rolled some of those issues into a proposed change order, which I've included with your memorandum. In general terms, it includes some sanitary sewer crossing alterations. I've also included the cost and summarized the additional time that would be included in the change order. That cost is $5,000, 2 additional days on the contract. Storm sewer crossings, similar to the sanitary sewer crossings, at $4,500 at 2 days. An addition of a gate valve that was required by the DNR following their review of the plans at a cost of $6,500, 1 additional contract day. A meter pit relocation, which was a negotiation with the property owner, part of the negotiation to purchase property from them. So that followed the contract. So now we're rolling it in by change order at a cost of $5,048 in 2 days construction. Unsuitable backfill material was encountered in a section of the transmission main. It had to be removed and suitable material brought back in. The estimated cost on that is $15,750 in 3 days construction. And then there was some service line and plumbing repairs at 61707. So a total proposed change order at $37,415.07 and 10 additional days on the contract. The prices included in the change order are unit prices. The totals will be verified following construction of these items in the change order. So they may vary by a little bit. But the impact on the contract is to increase it by the change order amount to $790,134.07 and extend the contract time from November 30th to December 10th. So unless there are any questions, I'd recommend approval of the change order.
All in all, the project is coming along, and in the grand scope and the grand scheme of the project, we've seen change orders that have come in worse, I feel like, so.
For the distance being crossed, it's just amazing we
Amount of
haven't seen
rain,
more yet.
the weather, it's really slowed a lot of it
Maybe
down.
more.
Yeah, I imagine there will be, Randy.
This is the bulk of it.
It's been very impressive to follow the construction and watch this new water line and system come to fruition. It's a truly amazing process. A lot of work going on out at the well sites as well as across town.
You bet.
Did the gate valve, it says on here gate valve adjustments, did they actually install a new gate valve then? Did I
Yeah.
understand right?
Yes, we adjusted the number of gate valves in the contract, but it was an additional valve required by the DNR. Actually, to isolate the line, they have a new regulation. The lines have to be isolated now on both sides of river crossings. And that's what this gate valve, we were one short of isolating all of our river crossings.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Randy on this? Then I need a motion to approve change order number 1 to the Group A transmission main project.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Jensen?
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Tate?
Yeah.
Motion is approved.
We need one additional motion with respect to the water supply well project at all, or has that covered everything that we needed in that motion?
There's another
There's a
separate.
Yes, so that's going to be our next thing. So Randy, you want to take that?
Sure. During the construction of the wells, there were two issues encountered that were not in the contract or plans. They included the construction of a containment curb in the well number 19 well house. This was a requirement following DNR review. It's actually in well 19 well house, there is a generator. And this containment curb is around the generator in case the fuel tank on the generator leaks and contains fuel in the building. And that's a requirement by the DNR, like everybody wants fuel in their building. But anyway, that's a requirement. And also, there was a requirement to adjust some grading. The DNR did require our well number 18 to be raised by 0.6 of a foot. So that was done. And
2 inches?
a little over 6 inches. And then the well number 19, there was a nuance in their offset requirements that resulted in a requirement for us to relocate well 19 on property that had already been purchased. So that, it evolved to include additional grading, driveway, and the whole works to relocate that well by 70 feet. So that's been done. Total cost of those two issues is estimated at $32,843.28 with 10 additional days of construction. The impact on the contract is to add that $32,000 for a total contract price of $1,227,543.02, and then extend the contract completion time from November 30th to December 10th. Unless there are any questions, I'd also recommend approval of this change order.
How are we tracking on a December 10th completion?
We're pretty good on the transmission main. The wells themselves have a lot of work to be finished yet. And there's been no indication firmly that that time period would not be met so far.
Okay.
I gotta ask Randy, because my curiosity is killing me. The containment curb, is it tall enough to contain all the fuel?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
How many other generators do we have out there? I assume there's already some.
We have two generators, one at the wastewater treatment plant and one at the high service pump station.
And the obvious question, are those in containment? So they're only requiring this on new ones.
Okay.
How tall is it, Randy?
This curb,
Yeah.
it's about almost 8 inches. And tall enough to contain the gallons in the fuel tank.
That's diesel fuel, I assume?
Yes.
All right, what's underneath this containment? I'm just curious, is this like a rubberized mat type thing?
No, no, it's just concrete floor. And it's the concrete floor of the building. And then this curb will just be
So it's just a
built-
curb
built upon.
that didn't used to be there. So.
Yes. Mhm.
Any other questions? Then I need a motion to approve change order number 1 to the Group B Water Supply Well Project.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Haley?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Tate? Cox?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right. Our next report is the 2015 Council Annual Planning Session Action Plan, and Harold?
Okay, when you met on August 29th, following that, or at that time, you established what was called New Priority Projects, Programs, Policies, and Initiatives. And you approved that some time ago, and now we're up to the action plan of how do we make these things come about. We've had some discussion previously. These are my suggestions. These are taken word for word from the plan on page 8. The first one is investigate enhancing the Community Endowment Fund to offset project expenses and/or operational expenses. Then there's some more wording with it. And what I've done this year is I've indicated action, who has the major responsibility, and then some comments that go along with that. So in this particular case where it says investigate, the major responsibility is up, in my belief, up to the mayor and city council members to determine what, if anything, they want to do with this. And at your last time that we talked about this, you indicated that you wanted the mayor to determine, unless you pre-agreed, when to conduct a workshop or appropriate discussion. And I'm suggesting, because this is not sensitive to budget, that this be done February or March, or it could be even done later. So any questions about that particular one? No problems with the major responsibility being the mayor and the city council members. Okay. The second one is investigate possibility of providing staff to develop new ideas and promote community events, theater, and other community programs. That major responsibility also is to the mayor and city council, because you're creating a new position. So or some kind of combination. So that would, in my belief, that would be a major responsibility going to the elected body. And I've also commented here that the mayor determines when to conduct a workshop, suggested for January. If you're going to add something here in cost in the next budget, then we would need to have that decision made by the first meeting in January. Any questions or comments about the second one?
So circling back to that, just to make sure that this is kind of clear, then the mayor determines when the workshop is. The council and mayor, staff then have a workshop, determine maybe action steps on the particular topic. If one of those action steps is to identify what other community endowment marketing strategies have been successful, or determine what community theater, community development positions there might be out there, they could instruct staff to then seek all of that information from other communities and bring that back to a later meeting, correct?
Sure. And the reason that I said that this is the responsibility belongs to the elected body is because these words of investigate are the first part.
Okay.
It's not an attempt to drive to an action, but it may end up in an action of something being done.
Okay.
Other comments about that one? Okay, then number 3 is investigate Graham Park parking concept. Here the major responsibility is staff, because we have the information, and the council members. And the mayor would determine when to conduct a workshop or appropriate discussion, and I would suggest this be done in December or January. If you want to expend some money in the next budget, we would need to know what you want to do. And we would certainly provide a lot of input on this particular part. Any comments, questions?
Was there any conceptual stuff done prior when they were doing the tennis courts at all? Had anything
No.
really been looked at? No?
No.
Okay. But I don't know if there was some
Well,
information.
there was light talk,
That's, okay. Nothing.
never anything beyond that. Okay, no other comments or questions on 3? Okay, 4 is the cemetery maintenance building, and of course there, we already have a set of plans, so the major responsibility is with the staff to make sure that you get another copy of that. And the mayor would determine, mayor determines when to conduct a workshop. And again, since this may be an expenditure in the next budget, I would suggest that this be done in December or January. And that would be crucial, that we would have that done by no later than the first meeting in January and hopefully by the last meeting in December. Because staff will put together their recommendations. In December, Laura will work those all through, make sure that they all come together, and then I review those in January, and then we present them to you in late January or early February. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, city signs at entryways to the city. Major responsibility, the staff is aware of the intersections and some work that has or has not been completed. And again, this would be mayor determine when to conduct a workshop. Any questions or comments about number 5? Okay. Number 6 is review city sidewalk policy, investigate developing a sidewalk repair program. This major responsibility belongs to the mayor and city council members, and we will support all of the documentation or information that you need to have your discussion about this, and this would be left solely to the mayor to determine when to conduct the workshop. Questions, comments? Okay, number 7 is evaluate compensation of mayor and city council. This certainly is the major responsibility to the mayor and city council members. We won't make any suggestions. We can do background work, and as David has done with what you'll be working with here in a little bit in a workshop, he can perhaps do some more investigating work on that if you choose to. And this is, the mayor determines when to conduct a workshop or an appropriate discussion. Any questions or comments on number 7? If not, then I would ask you to make a motion to approve the action plan as proposed.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Seaman?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yeah.
Motion is approved.
All right. Our final report is the City of Carroll Employee Handbook Update, Medical Insurance Eligibility, and Laura.
Well, as we know, the Affordable Care Act has been in place for a few years now, and as the years go on, more and more components of it are being implemented. Beginning in 2015, one of the latest ones has to do with what's called the pay or play penalties. And the City of Carroll definitely falls under the category what's called an applicable large employer. So we have to follow these guidelines and these rules as it determines, and how we figure out who is considered full-time under the Affordable Care Act rules. Under like the Fair Labor Standard Act, full-time is 40 hours. Under the Affordable Care Act, it involves having to offer health insurance or not, 30 hours as a full-time employee. So what this information before you is that there are some rules or guidelines out there that gives you a couple different methods on how you can approach figuring out your seasonal and your variable hour employees if they don't have a set schedule, how to determine if they are full-time or not. And the method that is the most favorable, that will work the best for us, is what's called the look-back measurement method, which allows an employer to count an employee's hours of service during one period of time, which is called the measurement period, to determine if they are full-time for a future period called the stability period. Without getting into how that all works, just know that this is the better option for us to, as opposed to doing a month-to-month, because you could have an employee who, if you did month-to-month, could be considered full-time one month, and the next month not, and you're flip-flopping, you could be flip-flopping back and forth. So one month you have to offer them health insurance, and one month you wouldn't have to. It becomes very administratively burdensome. So what this one does is, the policy that we've got laid out here, I worked with Benefit Source and had some sample language and then tailored it to our situation. We would use what we would do a 12-month measurement period running from July through June, which is our fiscal year, have a 30-day period where we would, what they called an administrative period, and then if anybody would qualify and we would offer, if they work 30 hours or more, they would start with benefits August 1st. And then during that time that if they do, during the stability period and they do accept health insurance, they're running through another measurement period that you're watching to see if they are continuously being full-time or not. Working with Benefit Source, this is a requirement to have what's called the part of your summary plan description, but since we're a governmental entity, we don't have one of those. And so Benefit Source recommended that we put this as part of our health insurance or our employee handbook as information for all the employees to see, to know when you get a copy of the handbook. If you're one of those variable hour employees or a seasonal employee, this is how we would determine if you would qualify for having to be a 30-hour week full-time employee under the Affordable Care Act.
How many do we have that fall under that right now?
Right now, we've got maybe 2 or 3 employees that we really watch their hours very closely. Otherwise, all of our other employees who are offered health insurance have a set at least 40-hour work week schedule. Right now, I'm not aware of anybody who would be working somewhere between, consistently working between 30 to 40 hours a week. We don't have that right now.
So you'd be following, if you did month to month, you'd be following just 2 or 3 employees, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about our lifeguards, our extra MOIC help in the summer, now them get enough hours to come close to.
Not at this point. But we've talked some in the office and the other department heads know, you know, if situations change with employees, we need to make sure we have that conversation about what is changing with their work hours, why is it changing, is this what we want to do? This is not what we want to do, because if you do change their hours and they will get over 30, well, then we have to start looking at health insurance as a possibility. So we have those discussions in the office. This gives you documentation. There's nothing in the Affordable Care Act that says you have to have this written. But it is a strong recommendation that you do have something written, so that if later somebody comes back and challenges what you're doing, you can say, well, this is what I'm following.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great.
Laura, I see that this is effective July 1 of 15.
Yes.
That we use the look-back measurement method.
Yes.
Laura, on the next page, you use a different stability period, August 1 through July 31st. What's the difference?
You have a measurement period where you determine are they full-time or not. And then if it is determined that they are full-time, then that next period is called the stability period.
Okay.
Where you would, if they do qualify for full-time, you would have to offer them health insurance.
So it's like looking forward.
Yeah, so then you'd have a stability period that's at least the same amount of time as your measurement period. In our case, we've chosen a 12-month period.
Okay. And the other is for someone not employed on average for 30 hours, right?
Then
They're not deemed full-time.
Full-time,
Okay,
as
I've
it
got
relates to
it.
the Affordable Care Act. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
So the method we're using is not spelled out as a suggestion in the Affordable Care Act. It's a method we came up with, not...
No, the method is, the Affordable Care Act does not say you have to have anything written. The method, I'm not 100% sure if those came from the Affordable Care Act or if that came from guidance as a part of it, but those are the 2 options or 2 methods that are widely being used. I guess, no, they came from the rules that came out of that act.
How'd you learn this?
Through Benefit Source and the information I get from them.
Okay.
As they
Good for
read
you.
it, they find out more and more.
Yes, yes, we have conversations quite regular.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Laura on this matter?
Thanks for all your time, Laura.
Yeah.
This is confusing.
Then I need a motion to approve the addition to section 15.2 medical insurance, which documents the look-back measurement period, measurement method for determining full-time status under the Affordable Care Act.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Jensen?
Yes.
Fleshman?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Tate? Motion is approved.
Thank you very much. I trust everyone has read the committee reports. Mayor would just like to congratulate the schools who participated and the chamber on a great band day here in Carroll again. I'd like to remind everyone to attend and/or tune in to the City Council Candidates Forum at Carroll High School on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Absentee ballots are available for those that don't anticipate being able to participate in the elections coming up in November. The Carroll County Solid Waste Commission meets tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. That's all I have. Any comments from the council?
Do we have some items left yet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Then if there's no comments from the council, we are going to move into the work sessions. And first up is the zoning code review. And for that, I have Chief Schreck and our friend Chris Whitaker from Region 12. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody.
Go ahead.
I guess you all have a draft of the proposed changes and recommendations, I guess, to the zoning ordinance. What I'd like to do briefly is kind of walk through these, provide a little bit of logic behind some of them where I can. But there's really a lot of the changes are very minor, striking a word or adding a word. A couple of the sections when we get to wind generation, solar energy, those are more extensive changes, so we'll probably spend a little bit more time there. Is that okay? So.
And I just add that we did go through this with planning and zoning throughout the summer, I guess, with meetings that they had. And we reviewed everything. They made several suggestions on changes, and we worked through that process. And in the end, they recommended that this draft be forwarded to you for final approval. So.
Thank you, Greg. I guess page 2 is the first, really the first edition. I'm going to take for granted that you have color copies or black and white, but number 15 deals with automobile service stations. The addition here is a place of business where engine fuel is stored in tanks. Previously it was underground tanks. Typically the practice now is not necessarily an underground tank, so the word tank, underground would be removed and it would just be stored in tanks as a definition. Page 12. Unless I skipped you. No, okay, thanks, Greg. Greg's going to keep me in line here, so whenever well, that's a big job, isn't it? So, really, and this again is just the districts established. We did incorporated the AP overlay district into the ordinance, the R8 district, the WECS, the Wind Energy Conservation or Conversion System district, and in the SES, the Solar Energy Standards in the ordinance. And those are just noted there on page 12. Page 14, item number 7. This just really deals with a building should abut a street or by permanent easement, and strike through the word easement. And this just kind of cleans up the language there on that section. This also adds the driveway, apron, or entrance from the front property line to the public street shall be paved with concrete, 6 inches in residential districts, and 8 inches in commercial and industrial districts. I think this was really more done by practice than by ordinance, but it did that does incorporate really the building official's practice into the zoning code itself. Make sense? Page 19, in the A2 agricultural district, letter L on the top of page 19, it strikes the use of private garages so that you can only have private parking areas. The bottom of page 25, in the R5 high-density residential district, it adds the use under letter N of parking lots, allow the use of a parking lot in the R5 districts. Yeah, and one thing that we did that should be incorporated into this, and it's really was kind of probably hindsight, is that the parking lot should be defined in the definition section where it is hard surface, either asphalt or concrete. But I would recommend that we add that into the definition section and just kind of cleans up the language of what a parking lot really is.
Chris, you're saying that you would recommend you add that in. Is that not in the definitions?
That is not in the definitions right now, Mike. That was one of those things, well, we kind of back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, parking lots was not a specific permitted use in an R5, but you have high-density residential and multifamily dwellings in R5, so we figured any associated parking lot on the abutting lot be permitted for that area.
Would it be advantageous to a concrete parking lot versus gravel parking lot, or just parking lot?
If I would define that, I would define it as a hard surface, so it would be either asphalt or concrete, whichever, and exclude really a gravel or rock or a gravel parking lot.
Right.
Can we do that in definitions you recommend, Chris?
Yes, that's what I would recommend that we do. It's not in here now, but that's one thing that I would recommend that we do include. I think now we're going to jump all the way to page 42. And this language is cleaned up in probably 3 or 4 spots. 19.4 deals with minimum requirements, and then you go down to side yards. The previous wording was the side yard shall be a minimum of 5 feet, except in case of a commercial use lot adjoining a residential lot. Then the side yard should be a minimum of 5 feet. Well, that language is very unclear because you could have a non-conforming use next to a commercial lot. So this really, what this does is cleans it up to a residential district and removes the word lot. So you'd get out of those non-conforming use, where you have a non-conforming use, but it goes back to what the zoning districts are.
Chris,
yes.
I have a quick question, but you use the word lot referring to commercial use lot adjoining a residential district. So you use lot and then you use district. I'm not tracking with that one, Greg.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know how we could better define it, but it's, if you have a lot in we'll just say a B2 district.
Okay.
And then the separation line is a lot that has a house on it.
So a lot.
Now, that may be in a B2 district also, Carolyn, but it's existing non-conforming.
Right.
Okay.
So what this does is basically eliminates, the lot word, residential use lot.
Okay.
And makes it like the
helped.
proper zoning district.
Okay, thanks.
So, I see what you're saying there, but that's, I think, how we can best define it, I guess.
No, you made it clear. No, thanks.
Sorry to muddy that up, but Greg gave you better explanation. So, page 44, again, the same language. Removes the word lot, replaces it with the word district in both 20.4 letter B in those two locations. And does the same thing at the bottom of page 45 on 22.4 minimum requirements. And this is in the industrial district. Page 48. This is a totally new section. Deals with wind energy conversion systems, not conversation. So, I don't know, really the high points of this are, and I can walk you through this. Really, wind energy conversion systems shall be allowed as a special use accessory in all zoning districts except residential. So there's really clearance test number one. Wind energy, not in residential district. The second, and this is really a prohibition, there shall be no commercial wind energy conversion systems. Not only within the city, but also in the 2-mile 2080 agreement area, the 2-mile district around the city.
There should be no, you're saying residential.
No commercial. No commercial. No commercial.
Like they can't, not for profit.
Correct. And it goes on in here, Adam, to talk about, and really what it gets down to, commercial wind energy, when they're selling it to the consumer. That, the big wind farms that are, northwest of town, those would not be permitted in the city or in the 2-mile 2080 area.
But that does not cause conflict with folks who introduce power that then they receive credits back. Technically, they're quote unquote selling it back to the grid so that their bill isn't as high.
Correct.
So that we're not muddying that up, are we?
No.
Okay.
Chris, that was going to be my question also, whether we needed to include, there is no definition for commercial wind energy conversion systems up in the definition. Your commercial, you have wind energy conversion system, but there's no definition for commercial. Or is that just so obvious we don't need to?
I think, and we could define it. I think it's difficult to define, but I think when you go back to letter G on page 50, use of electricity generated, the wind energy system shall be used exclusively to supply electric power for on-site consumption.
Okay.
But then it goes on, excess electrical power generated by the wind energy system presently, goes on with a lengthy definition, really the buyback, or how they put it back on the grid.
Right. So Chris,
It can be,
go ahead, Carol.
No, that's fine, no.
Nope, go ahead.
So
Yeah, go.
I gotta take this to layman's level for me, okay? Go down more simple. An individual can erect a wind generation system on their residential, or we said no to residential, didn't we?
If it's in a residential zone district.
Can't do
So
that.
then no.
Okay, so a commercial business,
could.
myself for instance, I could put one up as long as I just use it for myself, not for profit selling it off to someone else.
As long as you meet the requirements. So if you go on to page 49, I think move ahead a little bit. When it talks about regulation, you have to have a 2-acre minimum lot size for a wind energy system, and be able to meet the setback requirements, which shall be 110% of the total system height from any property line. And then the maximum height is 80 feet. And you can have no more than one on any parcel. So if you can meet those criteria, you can, but you still have to go back and receive a special use permit from the Board of
Okay, Chris, the 80 feet means the highest, when you have.
Correct.
Okay,
From the
top of the
base to the highest point of the
point
blades.
that it
Yep.
reaches, okay.
Now, would the wording now preclude people from joining together with other property owners? You got two adjacent, I mean, 2 acres is a pretty good size lot. Let's say somebody wants to get together with their neighboring property. Is there any need to be specifically preventing that?
I don't think it would preclude that, as long as they can meet, well,
That's what I didn't understand.
yeah, definitely, well,
You have property owner A and B right next to each other.
Yeah.
They each own an acre.
right.
They want to stick one right in the middle of the 2 acres.
Would,
Is that prevented?
Yes.
There's two lots.
you have to have a 2-acre minimum
You have
lot
to-
size.
Your one lot has to be 2 acres.
Okay. So you
So you
do
can't do that.
could not.
But if they had a 4-acre lot,
Then they could,
Right.
on their own.
but if the wind energy conversion system isn't strong enough to power both units, it's not gonna work.
What other questions you have? You could probably throw me hypotheticals about it for, now till next Tuesday.
Well, I got a chance to sit in on quite a few of the meetings anyway, and I think the one thing to note on this is that we are trying to be out in front of this. There's a lot of cities who still have yet to adopt anything with respect to solar or wind generation at a consumer use level. So I guess from what I gathered from our discussions was that you guys, through the Board of Adjustment, would have to also take some of this on case-by-case basis, and, you know, if somebody comes up with something that we don't think of, at least we have some guidance to begin with. Is that my understanding?
Yes. And if you look back at the definition of lot too, you know, the definition of lot is a parcel of land under one ownership. So I think that probably would cover that.
eliminate, preclude
If somebody
that.
wanting to combine 2 lots, so.
There's ways to figure that out if people really want to go about it.
And from a wind perspective, I know a lot of people just think of wind as the blades, but there is wind energy that's being created that looks almost like metal art. That
Like a turbine.
there's spires, and they're just on a pivot, and they're only maybe 12 feet, 15 feet off the ground. Those would still not be allowed in a residential area. Is that right?
That's correct.
So that's where I kind of say we've had a few comments from folks that while we're headed down, I think, the right path to start identifying this stuff, how limiting do we want to be? And I think that seemed to be what the discussion around the table was too.
You know, and Adam, with the 10 years ago, we never had this conversation about wind energy. If we would have, it'd been probably very, very limited. Now, it's, you know, more and more prevalent with more and more communities, and it's really hard to keep in front of the technology. You know, with the systems you talk about, well, what are they going to exactly be? Are they going to be very feasible, or are you going to see, you know, it's hard to judge. I guess it's hard to regulate or kind of guide that development. But you know, the more requests that you get, you at least have some foundation here to start with.
Okay, Chris, on page 56, the height regulations, they're the same as in the former zoning. And it's 45 feet, but you have an exception for wind energy conversion systems. So that's your 80 feet,
Yes.
except in residential districts.
Well,
It said on page 56. That language is a bit,
Beyond residential.
right,
so we skipped to the solar section.
Yep.
well, I'm looking at the
Right.
height
Okay,
regulations.
this,
We're still at the
Bear with me
45 feet. But then you have the exceptions, and then you have the wind energy conversion system in the 27.1 as an exception. So in residential districts, you cannot get to that maximum height of 80 feet?
You can't put one in a residential
You
district.
cannot put one
Period.
at all.
No wind in residential.
So really, that except in residential districts is.
Really doesn't apply.
Doesn't need to be there. does
So,
it?
And in section D.
right, that's what I wondered, it just,
Section D on 50 says clearance of blade above ground, no portion of the tower-mounted wind energy conversion system shall extend within 30 feet of the ground.
yes.
That height regulations on 56 though, that's talking about solar.
That's solar.
though.
That's
not-
specific to
That's
solar.
not wind though.
The
Right.
next one is 53, let's just stay in order.
Yeah.
Let's-
Yeah.
Let's not get too far ahead.
Well,
you.
but the wind, under 27.1, wind energy conversion system is mentioned. It's
We
not.
still got to do on page 53 yet.
Yeah.
Let's,
Well, we were talking about the maximum height on page 49.
And maybe that should just be struck,
Yeah.
struck,
Yeah.
just to- when it comes to wind energy.
We're just trying to
Let's see.
correlate the heights. So
Well,
we were.
There is no
somewhere-
height.
There is no height.
There is no height in residential. It's that simple.
Because there's
Okay.
no, there's no
Can't be there.
permission.
There's no
Maybe-
permission.
It's not permitted.
Then maybe omit, somebody said omit that in parentheses, except in residential districts.
So, okay. Do you
I
have
don't-
any other questions on the wind energy ordinance itself? There's again, I think the main point, not allowed in residential. 2 acre minimum lot, 80 feet height, always goes to the Board of Adjustment for special use permit.
Chris, the maximum height, is that the tip of the blade
Yes.
or the height? So the tip of the blade can't go more than 80 feet.
Correct.
Chris, I think I know the answer to the question, I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
The reasoning behind not allowing in residential.
Thank you.
The reason, I just think it doesn't, to me, and again, let's talk about tower systems. I don't think it creates a good cohesive land use pattern. How can I put this? Personally, I think though the commercial generators create noise, whether you like the site or not. I think those small systems that close to town or in that district will do the same thing and have a bad effect on orderly and neighborly development. And again, in the residential, in very few cases, you'd never meet the setback requirement.
Because the lot sizes aren't big enough.
I mean, you could maybe do it in, Greg, maybe at R7? A little, see, under 2 acres. I don't know if you'd ever make it on lot size. So, and you know, then you get into the safety thing. Well,
There we go.
you want that tower right next to your house and the wind is blowing onto your neighbor's house if it blows over. I don't know if that's a good practice. So,
Now, if the technology changes and it works down the road, we can always change it, but I don't see it advancing that fast where you're going to have a wind collector 6, 8 feet tall, and if your houses are 2 or 3 feet apart, you're not going to get enough wind through there anyway.
It might be relevant to keep in mind that the planning and zoning has been through a lot of these same questions and consideration, and they're recommending to you this language which they feel is adequate. That doesn't mean you can't change it, but they've really chewed on this a lot already and deviated. So.
Yeah, I think that was part of the discussion in the residential area with P&Z. They wanted to be a little bit more conservative, at least at this point. And And Doc, you made their point where they say, or they're thinking as technology advances, maybe we can open up the windmill in residential areas a little bit more. But they wanted to play it a little bit more conservative, at least now, at this point.
Chris, I have another question. When we were talking about height, did you review the airport zoning regulations that are in our city code of ordinances to see how what you did works with it?
Greg, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think part of the
Did you go through
requirements of
that?
the special use count are FAA approval, right? You know, we do have that airport zone in our
In the
maps we use.
okay.
But yeah, it's in there under the special use, I believe it talks about shall meet FAA approval and various things like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know all the FAA regulations.
Page 48. Yep, 25.2 general regulations. Letter F, FAA regulations.
Okay, good, that's good.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah, we want to be aware of that because that airport space actually does
Well-
get into the city of Carroll here for height.
Well, yeah, and then there's that airport zoning in the code. But what I was curious about, and I think you've covered all the bases, is the conflicting regulations with the airport zoning, that the stricter regulations prevail under, and this is again in our city code of ordinances, conflicting regulations, whether the conflict is with the respect of height of structures, use of land, or any other matter, the more stringent limitation or requirement shall govern and prevail. That's in the code and also in our Iowa code and in our code of ordinance. So is there anything that you can see would be a problem? Nothing? Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
so it would be up to the applicant to come up with the evidence proving that they have approval from the FAA.
Yeah, and they have all the forms online. Is that what they would use?
Yeah, that's what,
Okay.
looking at this as building official, that's what I would say.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Any more questions on wind? We'll move on to solar. This is something we never talked about 2 years ago. And there's probably 90% of the cities in Iowa that still don't address solar energy standards or solar energy systems in their zoning ordinances today. A lot of cities just treat solar energy systems as accessory uses or incidental uses of the primary structure. I think this is a more complete, more baseline approach. Does it have some restriction to it? Yes. Does it allow a vast majority of systems? I believe it does. So, but again, this was developed after looking at about 7 model ordinances from 7 different states. The one that it closely mirrors, probably not exactly, from the state of Minnesota, and completed, I think, by the University of Minnesota as a study. But again, these are, I think, kind of provides a good basis. Is it going to allow every solar energy system? No. Does it account for everyday changing technology in that energy? Absolutely not. But it does give you a good base for a lot of systems, and really to adapt in the future as well. So,
And this particular does include both residential and commercial use, so all areas of the city.
that is correct. Really, page 53 talks about height. Building or roof-mounted system shall not exceed the maximum allowed height in any zoning district. So there you can't, whatever the maximum height is in that district, that's the maximum height for the solar system. Ground or pole-mounted systems shall not exceed 20 feet. at their maximum orientation. One thing about visibility, I guess, bottom third of page 53, visibility. Active solar energy systems shall be designed to blend into the architecture of the building or be screened from routine view from public rights-of-way or other than alleys. The color of the solar collector is required to be consistent with other roofing materials.
So basically black on black.
Correct. Pretty. Ground-mounted systems have to meet the minimum setback requirements in the districts. Page 56, the height exemptions. And when it talks about wind energy conversion systems, prepare and accept in residential districts, that language probably can just be struck through. And then solar energy systems except in residential districts.
Did you want to touch on that one, visibility, solar energy system?
Oh. 53, very tough thing to back up to 53.
That's one we discussed on the east-west road.
Yep. Trying to think of the best way to explain this. Okay, bottom of page 53. Solar energy systems with mounting devices. Well, let's start with number one. The visibility. Letter C, number one. Building integrated photovoltaic systems. These shall be allowed regardless of whether the system is visible from the public right-of-way, provided the building component in which the system is integrated meets all setbacks, land use, or performance standard for the districts in which the building is located. Okay? And then solar energy systems with mounting devices using roof mounting systems shall not be restricted if the system is not visible from the closest edge of any public right-of-way. So if say your front right-of-way, your property line, and you can't see that on your roof, there's no restriction. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, okay. Maybe Greg and I were overthinking this maybe too many times, because he and I bounced this back and forth like, I don't know if this is clear or not. But then it goes on. Those roof-mounted systems that are visible from the nearest edge shall not have a highest finished pitch steeper than the roof pitch on which the system is mounted, and shall be no higher than 12 inches above the roof.
So you just don't you don't mount the solar system to your roof so that it extends beyond the pitch of the roof.
That's exactly right.
You just need to keep it underneath the pitch. Yep.
Questions about that? I think that's probably more beneficial than listening to me talk.
Layman's terms, Chris.
Yeah.
Layman's terms?
Okay. Layman's terms?
Solar, Carroll, Iowa.
I think does this have some restriction? Yes. But if it's a roof-mounted system on a pitched roof, I think it's, easily permitted. Some of the flat roofs might have a few more challenges. Depends on how far those buildings are set back from the right-of-way. But I think it's, you know, I think it's pretty straightforward. Greg, I don't know.
Yeah, we discussed that on the visibility. I think the Van Meter building, they have solar collection panels on there.
That's a good example.
And you don't see the face of the solar panel, but you see the side edges, and I don't know whether that's offensive to anyone or not. And then I mentioned the other day there that I think Slumberland has some old solar panels on there that you probably don't notice, but the face you can see from the right of way, so.
They tore the parapet off that building, you think?
They might have, G-Man.
When I drove by, after Greg mentioned that, I was like, those are very noticeable, but I think if there's a parapet on the building,
would help.
I never saw them if there was one. I just didn't pay attention either.
Yeah, so those are a couple examples, I guess, and I don't know, we talked about seeing the face or the side, whether that has any difference to council or not, I don't know.
The Van Meter one is a prime example. That's a high energy, energy efficient building, really state-of-the-art facility, which is to give credit. But if those panels, again, that building is set back a long way from the public right of way. So you can see those from the public right of way. But you can see this edge, not the face.
I think that the solar is the thing that...
They would probably have to make some adjustments there. There'd have to be some sort of special use or conditional use there. But that's one of those really hard to define, hard to regulate.
If I remember correctly, I believe that's a LEED certified
That's correct.
building, yep. Which is the premier, well, you can go to different levels.
Right.
That's the premier of energy use.
Yep. But now, if that building was facing the other direction, or the right of way, I don't know if I'd really like to see those panels day after day, week after week. But does the edge really matter?
And I think that we're going to see over time, solar will become more and more popular, probably more so than wind, I would think, because of the low cost, the low long-term operational cost. And I kind of compare it in some respects to what we're seeing now, even with people who are tinning their roof instead of shingling it. You know, we never would have thought years ago necessarily that in town you'd have a roof that's tin instead of asphalt. But they got all different colors now, different design concepts. That's come a long way, and you're seeing it on a regular basis. I don't know that 10 years from now we'll think anything different if you see panels on a roof.
No, I think if you go downtown where you have more or less a flat roof mounted system, I think a lot of those cases there'll be very, very permittable systems to install. Very, is that? I think so. Is there always going to be an exception? Of course there is. I mean, even the most basic of basic zoning things, there's always that what if situation. But even the residential systems, as long as they meet the pitch of the roof, I think it's pretty easy to do. Now, as technology changes, will this ordinance have to change? Absolutely. No different than the wind systems. But again, I think this provides the city with a good solid framework that's not overly restrictive, but doesn't just allow anybody to throw up whatever they want on their roof or in their yard in some willy-nilly pattern.
Okay.
Chris, I have one more question. Back in July, I think all of us received an email about a stipulation he read about in an article in the newspaper that he thought was unreasonable. And I could not find this language in here, but I may have missed it. Is there any language in this that says a homeowner could not mount solar panels on the roof if they were visible from the adjacent street? I could not find that, but doesn't mean I didn't miss it. He said this was unreasonable.
That's the edge of the lot one.
That's the edge of the lot? Okay, so
I think that's the language.
So you're talking about
again, visible from the front public right-of-way line.
Okay.
But again, if it blends, if it matches the pitch of the roof and meets, you know, similar architecture and style, it's permitted.
Okay.
So I don't.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's maybe a little misguided in the letter that you received.
Okay.
Well, that's referencing
one of our news stories.
Yeah, right.
I wrote that
And
story when
yeah.
this was developing. Chris and I
Right.
did an interview, and so it
Yeah,
wasn't.
it was a long time ago.
It was
yeah.
when it was in the draft stage, not in the final stage.
So this isn't
Okay.
anything that's going to be a problem?
I don't believe it is.
Okay, thanks, that's good.
Otherwise, the last house on the street is not going to be able to get anything.
Yeah.
Because that would be visible from the side.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it.
But if it blends in, it's okay. You know,
Right?
Yes. Again,
It fits the architecture of the house.
you gotta look at the pitch of the roof, the direct, and again, this is not easy, especially when you get on corner lots. You know, the way the streets run, the way your house faces, it's not, yeah, I can just say, yeah, that's always gonna be the case. But I think this is the best, I don't want to say model because it's not a model, it's pretty cutting edge. It's really the best guidance tool that we have available right now.
But there's nothing in there directly to eliminate
No.
the corner lots, the corner house from getting anything.
And should you come across anything, they always have the Board of Adjustment that they can go to
Yeah.
have a discussion, ask for a variance, what have you.
Yeah, the zoning.
Well,
This is part of the zoning ordinance, right? It would be anybody bereaved by any decision made can go to the Board of Adjustment, I believe.
and here again, the situation. Right now, you probably don't see very many of those permits for, or even new construction that incorporates solar. Is that going to change probably in the next year or 2 or 5? Absolutely. If you start to see 2 or 3 of those that say, hey, this just doesn't work and this is unreasonable, well, I did a bad job, and we can fix it. So, and this isn't set in stone forever and ever, just like the wind systems. This technology change really is use change, and really to some extent is affordability changes. That's when, you know, these become more and more popular, and when those regulations may need to be adjusted, and maybe they won't.
Okay.
Page 59. Off-street parking requirements. Number 6, general retail business. This was changed from one parking space for each 300 square feet of floor area. Previously, it was 200 square feet. Page 60, the retail stores, supermarkets, department stores, drug and sundry stores went from 1 parking space per 100 square feet to 1 parking space per 300 square feet. Really, what? I think that's the only parking one.
I think you looked around at
I
that,
looked at
this for other cities, and that 100 feet, where that was a tremendous number of parking spaces that someone would need.
That was probably more restrictive than some of the things in the Des Moines metro area, to be very honest with you. And I did a lot of comparisons. This seemed like a good average of what we found statewide, really a little less than what you had in the existing ordinance. What other questions do you have? I don't know if I can answer them all, but I'll shoot for
I appreciate you guys taking this on and implementing some of this new technology into it. I think questions will continue to come forward. We're already seeing it through the development of a commercial business that was meeting LED standards, and I think that'll be something that'll come about. So I feel like we're out in front. better than being behind.
If I could make one closing statement, and it's really more of things. Planning and Zoning Commission sat through several, probably not several hours at once, but several hour and a half sessions going through this over the last 6 to 8, 10 months. After they got done with the comprehensive plan, we really focused on this. They really took this to heart, spent a lot of time on it. I'd also like to thank Greg and Curry Johnson. They spent a lot of time going through this ordinance. What if, here's some things that we don't like. Their help was invaluable. So I guess with that, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Again, answer any questions that you may have.
Now, typically, we wouldn't ask you to take any action in a work session, but in this case, we're asking you to set a public hearing date, including the changes that were suggested or requested, and I think there's 3 or 4, if I remember correctly. Greg, you've been keeping track of this?
Yep.
And we'll bring that back then to the hearing with those changes. There will be no notations of what's been changed. This will be final form. You can change it. Now, David, is this a hearing, one-time hearing, and then it's approved and published in booklet form, which means it will not be published in its entirety. It will only be listed as being published in booklet form, which means you can come and get a copy.
Well, as far as publication, I think we can handle that however way we want it.
Okay.
But there's only one requirement for, or one public hearing required
It's not an
prior to
ordinance with
passage.
3 readings.
I'm sorry?
It's not an ordinance with 3 readings.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
public hearing, and
Public
then you
hearing
mark
comes
through the
first.
steps.
Right.
You can actually have first reading or full reading approval the first night, but you have to have a public hearing.
Correct.
And we would be requesting the next meeting, which is the 26th, or are you thinking later?
It's fine with me.
Anyone having concerns about doing this in 14 days? And I think we would
No, I think
recommend
it-
October 26th.
There doesn't have to be any public notice 30 days ahead?
Yes, there's.
Public hearing will be published.
7 and 10,
Okay.
or 4 and 10?
Yeah,
4 and 20?
4 and 20.
Standard is 4 and 20. And we'll meet that. Not less than, not more than.
All right.
So we'll need a motion to do
I was
that.
going to say, if there's no other questions or concerns, then could I get a motion for setting a public hearing on October 26th to approve any changes that have been discussed tonight while integrated into the new zoning ordinance?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Seaman?
Yes.
Tate?
Yeah.
Jensen?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Fleischner?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right. So our final work session this evening is the form of government. And David?
Thank you. At your planning session a month or so ago, there was some discussion, and it seemed to, there was some interest in maybe inquiring into a form of government change. What I've listed here in my memo, and I will just kind of summarize it for you. I'm not going to read through it, but as you all know, our present form is a mayor-council form, which was established in 1975, which set up the 6 council seats and the mayor. The form of government that we're looking at tonight would be a very similar form. One of the exceptions would be that your council members would be reduced to 5, and they would be elected at large. So the ward system, as far as city government, would be eliminated. Again, this council by ordinance provides for the city manager and prescribes the manager's duties and powers. We've done that with our present form, so no change there. Mayor appoints a council member as mayor pro tem, similar as we have right now. We're exactly the same, actually not similar. One minor difference is the next item or point. The mayor appoints the chief of police subject to consent of council. Now, that's coming out of the Iowa statute, and it does say the mayor appoints chief of police subject to the consent of the council. Presently, we have the council appointing the chief of police. This form would have the mayor appoint subject to the council's approval. So council essentially would still have the power to appoint a police chief. Last point there, mayor is not a member of the council and does not vote as a council member, with the exception of this: if there is a motion on the table that's deadlocked, the mayor could break that deadlock on a motion, not on a resolution or ordinance. The procedure to go through to essentially elect a new form of government would be the voters would need to present a petition to the council, and the number of voters is 25% of the last number of voters in the last city election. I think Doug provided in his article last Friday that there was 767 voters at the last, for the 2013 city election, which would amount to 187 voters that would have to sign the petition. Obviously, we're going to have a city election in 2015. That number will change. But essentially, it's 25% of the last number of voters at the last regular city election that would need to approve this petition and request council to take action. Council, if presented with that petition, would need to provide notice that there's been a petition, and a potential election date would be selected at that point. Number of dates that you can select as far as the election day on the petition. It's just a simple majority. If a majority of the voters approve the new form of government, it will be instituted. If the majority of the voters do not approve the new form of government, then it's 4 years before you can bring up that same form for election again. The election itself of the petition is on a separate date, and then your election of council members will then be at the next city election. Now, your next city election, obviously after this year's, will be in 2017. So in theory, you can have the election to change your form of government well in advance of the actual vote for the 5 at-large council members. And that, of course, obviously would be up to this council to make that decision. So again, that basic information, thought I would present that to you for your discussion tonight.
I have some added information. I inquired of the Iowa League of Cities how many cities have an odd number. They indicate 97%. Now remember, there's 900 and some communities in Iowa. So that doesn't mean that they're all small or large that have the even number. I'll give you some statistics about something else here in a minute. But they said 97% of all of the municipalities in Iowa have an odd number of elected council members. I inquired of my peers between a population of 5,000 and 20,000, and 22 of my peers replied, so this is not a scientific, it's just a random of those that replied. 18 of the 22 had odd number on their city council. 4 of them had even numbers, like ours. We are not included in this group. 13 had at-large and wards, which we have now, and 9 had at-large only out of this particular small group. So that gives you a little idea of, I don't know how many communities are between 5 and 20,000. A lot more than this, but I don't know exactly how many. Just give you a little idea.
But you can have an odd number with a mix of wards and at-large.
That would be a question for David.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
You'd have 4 wards
like
and
you
1
could have
at-large.
I mean, some cities probably could have 5 wards wards and then a couple at large or whatever. So when you're talking 97% or odd number, that could be a mix of 5 all at large, like this is you're discussing, or it could be a mix of ward with at large, correct?
Yes, and of these groups that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 22 that have 7 members. They may be larger communities. I didn't identify them by size.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Carol.
Does anybody know how long Carroll has had this form of government? Is it? It says pre.
As far back as I can go
pre-75,
was
that's as far-
1975.
That's when it changed from something to this?
You know what, and I don't know if it was
I don't
changed,
care.
but this form has been in existence here in Carroll since 75.
Okay.
We can do some research
I
with
was
the...
just curious, knowing the history as
Yeah.
Carroll grew. Yeah,
I'd kind of like to know what we had before this.
yeah.
Just curious if it's possible.
We can do some research or
We'll
put
open up the
Kelly...
minute books.
We'll put Kelly
Yeah.
after.
You're looking at their words.
Does anybody know what the population was then?
We can go back by when we find a place. We may have to have someone go through the year at a time.
1975
Mary
was probably
Baumholzer
around.
put
And then you can go to the
It
census.
hasn't changed
Yeah.
that much.
But I would say, I guess one of the questions I have though is the ward system necessary? I mean, I guess since I've been on council, when I first got on council, we had at least 3 council members that, I mean, Carolyn, Jeff, and Phil were all within the same area. We never chose to do a park on the south side of town only because those 3 were pushing something through, or we didn't do a street or a bridge or anything based upon geographic location. I didn't feel like we make all of our decisions based upon, scientific information of traffic patterns and ages of the roads or use of the parks or things of that nature. So I guess from a ward system, that would be one of the first questions I would wonder is that.
What was it before though? That's what was the ward system set up for the federal elections? And then after conceiving that, it just became a representative from each one of those 4 wards?
See, and I would ask is...
Because the ward system won't go away.
Right.
It'll still always be there.
Yeah.
And the ward
For
map
voting.
changed,
For
when did
voting.
it change, Dave? The ward map changed as we grew, then
As the
we,
population
because it's
changed.
supposed to have, the 4 wards are supposed to be balanced with population, so it's
Right.
that one man, one vote concept. Yeah. I can't remember when that changed.
Doesn't have it on the map.
I'm just curious, yeah.
But I was going to say, my question would be is there a reason it's not working is to, why are we looking at possibly changing it? Myself, I have no problem with making it not a number. I think it would probably help with efficiency in some means, but I'm not personally seeing a need to change the ward system.
I have a reason for changing the ward system. When I ran, there was not a real large body of people who wanted to run in our ward, and whereas I'm very glad to be here and glad to help represent Carroll, this is something I would rather have done 10 years of my life from now. I'm happy to do it now, 10 years ahead, but I wouldn't have done it if there had been some other people come forward who would have done it. And perhaps there would have been someone better than me who would have run if it wasn't limited to the ward. That's just my personal bit of experience.
And specifically, I guess, to that, at the same time, we had 3 people running for the at-large position because they didn't live in your ward. So there's where we're at. We have 3 people that are interested in our city to serve, and they can't serve because they're limited by where they geographically live.
Another problem with the current ward system is that if someone wants to move, they're out of their own ward, they'd have to give up their own position if they chose to re-elect.
Correct.
We did have that happen once
Yeah.
since I've been here.
Yeah.
And I do find that to be limiting. That's something else that's been brought up.
It could
as
even
well.
limit someone's choice to move, so.
I think it was a very good point to bring up that the wards do not vanish or disappear. It's just how we structure our elections, correct?
Yeah, ultimately, it's
You
just.
could go 6 at-large positions.
Well, the Board of Supervisors, when they run, they have to live within their district, but they're all elected at large. That,
Right.
that's kind of
It's a
a
different
different
system,
kind
too.
of hybrid system, yeah.
My question would be, is that making everyone at large, everything I've seen in writing has been there's more than one position, and we just take the top, say, 2 or 3, whatever's running out of an unlimited number of candidates. Is there something to prevent us from having these each be separate positions that you run for? Is that too complicated to do? I mean, here's at-large position number 1, and if you want to run for that, and then another one, does it have to be just the top vote getters, or can they be separate positions? Does that exist? Do you see what I'm asking?
But you'd almost be
Yeah.
right back in the ward system. So you
Yeah,
you can live wherever you
you'd almost
want.
be back right where, you'd almost be back to like a ward type system.
Why would that be? You can
Because
run.
you're specifically running in one section or another section or another section.
No, I'm saying you're running for a specific at-large position. In other words, let's say we have,
You're talking about staggering terms, is that correct?
well,
No.
it's impossible to stagger them that much,
Two
but
Yeah.
positions, 4 people running, 2 people say I want to
Yeah.
run for this one, 2 people say I want to
I'm
run
running
that
for
one. So it's
position
just-
A, I'm running for position B.
That's no different than Ward 1 or Ward 2. You could,
could
it's
run whatever you want.
semantics is all it is.
Yeah, Jerry, I don't think this form of government would provide for what you're talking about.
Right.
You know, if there's 2 positions open,
Right.
and it doesn't make any difference how many people are running.
There-
It's for those 2
It has to
positions,
be,
and the top 2 would get the, would get those positions.
well, I could use an example, would be the United States Senate. There's 2 senators that run, they're different positions. Okay, now sometimes they might even be in the same year. Is that not practical to do?
I don't think the form of government that I'm referencing tonight would provide that.
I feel like this is more driven towards the school board system, like, kind of like the school board is, right? That's
That's exactly what we're
all at large
discussing
people, but
is-
when you were on that, when you're on the school board, you represent the school
You
board. You don't
represent, it
choose
was
whether you-
the, yes, it was exactly what has been suggested here.
Okay.
Top, well, it just happened in the school.
Yeah, the top 3 got,
Top 3 went in. Top
There
3
were-
out of however many.
there were 3 openings and 4 people ran, so the top 3 won.
Right.
Now, if there just been 3 people that ran, 3 people got in, that's it.
Right.
Correct.
Well, this work session format's working nicely. This is the best discussion I've heard around this table in a while. This is very good.
Is there other information that we want to have staff line up before we can, I guess, make a decision? I think in this particular case, I mean, I would like to see that the council really wants to move forward on it. It'd be really nice if, as council members, then we just go out and seek some people to fill out the petition and take the leadership role in it and get the signatures and bring it back to ourselves and march forward. I mean, that'd be an ideal situation.
What's the downsides of, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I didn't think that council could advocate for or against a ballot issue.
Maybe that's.
According to the Iowa
That would have to come from,
Ethics and
it has to
Code.
be citizen directed.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
The
we
the
cannot-
petition would be.
The
Yeah.
petition,
Yeah.
but I mean, we cannot advocate for or against a ballot issue
Well, city cannot expend any city funds or assets.
for that.
But
Okay.
personally, we can still go out.
Personally,
and
you
Oh,
can.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Collect
as a
signatures.
But as a-
council, we,
Our
As
power
a-
as a council. it's done when we leave
It's
the
got
table.
to,
so-
this has to come from the grassroots, right?
Yeah, petition would need to
Yeah.
be brought forth to the council. Obviously, the city could not expand, like I mentioned,
Okay.
city dollars or city assets in either
Yeah,
promoting this or...
that's what I thought Adam meant, like running ads
Oh,
or
no, no,
something
no,
like that.
no, I was just
Okay.
thinking, we
Yeah,
don't,
That wouldn't be
we-
acceptable.
as we go out and get our own, I mean, we've all had to do it for our elections, go out and collect signatures. I'd just suggest if everybody, if we need
One person or a group
hundred
of
and
people
some,
will have
hundred
to
and
go
some
do that.
signatures is what you said, if everybody here goes out and gets 30 signatures from their area of town and brings back here, we've got the petition we need, and
A citizen has to do that, we can't go collect them.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Preferably.
you can go collect them,
Okay.
but preferably a
Yeah.
citizen. But as long as we don't spend public dollars, like putting radio ads
Right.
out and telling everybody that we want to do this. But I'm just saying from a organizational effort, if you want to make something happen, this is pretty easy for us to accomplish without any studies and what have you.
Okay, I'll go back to my question. So can anybody think of what the downsides of these two proposed changes would be? My studious friend?
I'm just listening. I don't know.
Anybody? Why should we not do this?
My only question would be, they say 2 heads are better than 1, maybe 6 heads are better than 5.
Right, that's what I was looking at. At least
That's
now
my
you got
concern, is 5 people enough?
on a community this size, I mean, you get 6 people, 4 of us have to come together to say yes on something. If you go to 5, now you just have to have 3.
So maybe then the next.
Or do you
thought
want
would be
7?
Or 7.
That's what I would,
You like 7?
at first blush, it seems to me that 7 is more appropriate than 5.
I'm not opposed to that.
It just, I guess to me, it's a check and balance to make sure that everybody's level-headed and making the correct decisions, rather than just getting 3 people that say yes. Then you gotta get 4.
My only drawback to doing away with the ward system is due to some personal issues that I've encountered in my life. I'm not going to get into details on those, but where, just because we've never had issues in the past of members being consolidated in one part and not putting it, doesn't mean that that couldn't potentially happen in the future, whereas a ward system would preclude that. So,
You keep the representation spread out, not consolidated.
yeah,
Plus,
and if you went to 4 and 3,
plus those individuals that are in that ward, the citizens in that ward know who they can go talk
Yeah,
to.
they have a go-to person.
That's within walking distance, certainly.
so that's where my reservation comes in with it. And if we opted to move towards 7 and kept 4 ward, 3 at large, that's 3 seats that open up quite regularly. So,
Boy, I serve the city of Carroll, not my ward. Maybe I should think differently, but
and I know exactly what you're saying. Like I said, I've seen some pretty ugly personalities in my lifetime where we don't know what the future holds there. This is one way to kind of control that. So that's my negative aspect that you're asking for.
That's
what the downside would be.
You're
what we're
talking
here to
about
do.
accountability and with the public, and also keeping the two-way communication and access.
Well, you know, when you look at at the number of voters from each ward, yeah, traditionally the 4th ward is the lowest voting ward. And if everything happens to end up on one side, is one ward going to feel left out? Are they going to feel they don't have a voice anymore? So, small issues, but
The potential is great,
yeah,
and a lot of harm could come from that if it gets too far.
possibly.
so perhaps then we think about keeping the wards, but going to say 7 council members?
And I think that'd be a nice fit.
I still don't know that that's gonna, it's not gonna save us from the situation that you referenced earlier, though.
No,
We're,
sure
we're not gonna be in a position where we're not gonna be in a better position where we've got folks that are willing to run for a seat. And now I mean, there's a lot of communities now that are in situations where nobody wants to run.
I think we just had a neighbor have that happen with a
Yeah.
seat, didn't we?
Yep. And they're writing in elected officials that don't even want the job. So, I mean, I honestly, I think that that's something to be considered as well, is, you know, that happens. And then what? You know, I mean.
And it's certainly something to keep in mind
and you
for
got
the
three.
future,
Yeah.
if it becomes a continuous problem. Right now, it's not.
Yeah, what is broke that needs to be fixed, I would ask?
I would just say
To
really
play the devil's advocate.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I would say at the end of the day, getting to an odd number is probably the best thing, because then a decision has to be made. You know, we hear a lot about, don't spend any more money on studies if you're not planning on doing something. Well, we're gonna have to, you know, in a odd number of people, you won't ever have that issue. It's gonna be up or down. Case closed. You won't have any of the drop for lack of majority. So I think there's a lot of appetite for that. That's out
In
there.
the 4 years that I've been on here, there's just one subject matter that has come up that I really saw a problem with. Otherwise, we were all 6-0.
Yeah.
I think there was maybe one vote, 5-1. But other than that, all the issues that we've had, everything's pretty much gone through 6-0.
I guess I've looked back at the record and there's a lot more of that. We've had more split votes than that.
Not 4 years I've been on here.
We just had it with the study for the aquatics at the rec center. We had it where we tabled the street maintenance building. We've had it where we
But they got tabled. That isn't.
But just to have we don't have to decide.
But yeah, I mean, but we've had 3-3 votes is
Maybe
what I
good
said.
data to have. Can we get that data?
Oh, yeah.
It's been over the last, say, I don't know how many years, 5 years, 10 years, what do we want, guys?
Yeah. But I think just the big thing is driving to a conclusion. I mean, it helps. There's 97% of the cities that have an odd number of people, and I will tell you, if you talk to any of the mayors or council people or former mayors, it's a lot easier to not run into that kind of a situation if you have an odd number of people.
Well, ultimately, it's in the hands of the citizens, so, I mean, we may
they
all
feel
have
that
our own
there's a
personal
problem, they can
views,
vote.
and it's interesting hearing pros, cons, et cetera, but ultimately, they will decide, so we can think about it.
Okay.
I would like to see that data just to know, you know, to your point, Carolyn, don't fix it if it's not broke. If we've really only had one, I didn't study that. I'd like to see that.
Okay.
Know how many times we've been hung or whatever you want to call it.
There's some subjectivity to that, but we can produce the information. It will take time. Someone has to go through all the minutes to see the votes.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, and if I'm putting too much of our labor hours to work for our staff, please.
But the public deserves the knowledge.
I think so.
Will it help if we limit how far back you go? I mean, to 2 years, let's
absolutely
say,
will.
instead of. How far back?
Absolutely.
2 years enough?
I do 4 years for my business planning stuff. I go 3, 2 or 3. I guess would be my thought.
You could look back, you could probably look back about 10 years. That way you can go back to other mayors and other councils if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to preclude it, just a.
I'm not just saying within the last 12 months. I'm saying over a period of time.
It's gonna take a long
We will put
time.
something together for you.
That's a lot of man-hours.
Excuse me, Laura will, I'm sorry.
Don't spend over 100 man-hours on it.
Well,
Just for
clarification,
woman hours.
just for clarification, my point, I would be excited about a change of numbers, just because, like I said, you think it improve efficiency, where we do get into gridlocks, like you said, it does drive to a conclusion. It's just, I would like to maintain the ward system, so that's my position.
Okay.
See, and I've heard a lot of good things about that tonight, and I thought it was excellent also to bring up, instead of 5, perhaps 7, to maintain the number of heads thinking around the table.
And areas of expertise people bring.
Most certainly.
I don't know.
All right. It also allows for more potential diversity.
Hey, it's a workshop. We
Yeah.
don't have to make a decision.
No.
We get to
That's-
hash this out.
yeah,
This is
that's
good.
right, that's right.
And we'll also try to check on the pre-1975 form of government
Okay.
Thank you.
for the council too.
Yep.
Add to the information you're receiving.
Go ahead.
I just have David one
Thank you,
question.
Dave, this was clear, easy to.
David, since this is citizen and grassroots driven, what if you have competing petitions? What if people that heard the discussion tonight, if somebody like, you know, the draft form of government that you put together, but then after hearing Councilman Kotz and his comments, or Councilman Jensen, somebody thought a ward system with 7 council people was preferable, and you had petitions for both.
I think there's a mechanism, Doug, where you could have 2 forms go up for election.
Is it,
Really?
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the form that we receive, so you have 3 forms, and you have the existing form, and then potentially two alternatives, and then the one that, would it be a plurality then?
Well, the election would be for the 2 alternative forms, because you're not going to, the election wouldn't be voting on keeping the present form.
But how can
It would
we
be-
abolish the present form without getting 50% approval? 50
You
plus 1.
gotta have a majority. Well,
Right.
with the 2 competing,
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure, but I'm assuming the
Mathematically, it'll make it a lot more difficult if you had 2 on the ballot.
Yeah.
Because it's going
Right.
to be a yes or no.
Right.
Yes to this or no to that. And mathematically, that's going to be rather difficult to
tough
get a
to-
Right, that's,
50%.
so does a yes vote for Plan A and a yes vote for Plan B both count as a yes vote, and then that's your 50%?
It'd be just strictly that plan.
Something would have to get a plurality of 50%, even though there's 3 choices.
You can
Makes
bring
it a
in,
lot harder to pass.
Yeah, and again, I think you're probably just looking at a choice of 2 rather than 3.
Gosh, where's that leave me if I like what we've got and I don't want it to go away?
you vote no to both.
Right.
We will ask David to
Yeah.
do some more research and accompany the information that we'll provide for you.
But again, in
Yes,
theory,
no,
that's
no.
possible. where you could
Correct.
have-
It would be a separate ballot issue, say yes or no on a 5-member council, or you'd have a separate petition with a separate ballot issue with a 7-member council, and you have to vote yes or no for either one.
Is that right, David?
And we'd confirm that with, with the auditor too.
The way I understood it when I read through it, it would be a separate ballot issue.
Okay, that makes
But
sense.
if you put 2 petitions on there, it's going to be rather difficult to get 50% to go for either one. You're going to split the vote, because you might have 1/3 that say no, or not vote at all, or you'll have some that'll say yes to one, no to the other.
I guess
Think
once
it'd
again,
be-
that's up to the people, eh?
Correct.
It's still gonna work out mathematically some way. Okay.
Well, we'll see what David brings back. Hopefully, we didn't just figure out a way to kill it before it ever got off the ground. But I think maybe that was where you're driving. Perfect. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Jensen?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Cox? Tate? Fleischner?
Yes.
We are adjourned.